I believe we are live. 1 2 1 2 4 5 4 5. Think we're live. Think we're live. Status Coup in the house. Big show. Big show. Let me send a text message out so more people know we're live. Jordan Sheridan, Status Coup. Hope everyone's having a nice day. Couple days before Christmas. We have Richard Wolff today to talk about this terrible, what I call shit stimulus sandwich. 59768. All right. Did I send the text message out to the people? Smash that like button so we can get more people watching this. We got 70 people watching. 28 have pressed the like button. Can I get all of you? Please smash that like button. I just sent out the text message, so we should get some more folks in here. Let me make sure we're good on Twitter. We're live on Twitter as well as Twitch. Say hello on Twitter and Twitch. Just wrapped an interview with Richard Wolff. Who is an awesome progressive socialist, actually, economist. I've spoken with him many times, and I wanted to talk to him about this $900 billion deal that, CNN and the MSNBC and the New York Times and all of these outlets are just heralding as a huge bipartisan accomplishment to give Americans during a deadly pandemic next to nothing. To give them crumbs, actually less than crumbs, in my opinion. Do I still have the graphic that Colin made yesterday? Yes. To give them a gigantic shit sandwich during a deadly pandemic where 8 million more people are now on the poverty level. Where over 20 million have filed unemployment claims. Where God knows how many people lost their employee health care. Terrible. So we'll have that interview with Richard Wolff. It hasn't even been edited yet, so you'll literally see my actual green screen before me. I didn't want to wait to have Colin edit it, which takes time. So it's raw. It's just my actual green screen behind me without the Status Coup graphic and Wolff. But it's good. I also want to remind you, I'll talk about this a couple times during the show, at 7:30 Eastern time, so in a little over 2 hours, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, we will have our monthly members call. So if you're not a Status Coup member, what the hell are you doing? Sign up, statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. Jen, I'm not going to overpromise. She's still very sick with coronavirus. She is going to try and be on the call in the beginning just to say hello. She's definitely not going to be on the whole call. For those of you that don't know, she is one of the, I guess they label them long haulers, COVID long haulers. So I was lucky. I mean, I had coronavirus, but I did not have the length that Jen has had. She has had an on and off fever for over a month. She has had severe fatigue for over a month. She now has nausea, which is a symptom. She has had breathing problems. Fortunately for her, she hasn't had to be hospitalized. Her doctor has told her that with people who have long-term consequences or long-term symptoms, it's typically about 4 weeks to 5.5, 6 weeks. She's almost at 5 weeks now. But she is going to try and hop on for a little bit just to say hello. It's, I've been doing kind of everybody's job right now. Obviously, totally understandable. She's been out, so nothing wrong with that. But I've been doing a lot of things behind the scenes. So if I haven't responded to your email or issue or whatever, if you've pitched me something, if you've sent an issue you're having, I'm trying to do my best. I'm also working on a story in the background that maybe I'll fill you in a little bit during the members call. I'm working on a fairly decent story, I think, on the Iowa caucus, fuckery. So I should have an update on when that's going to be published. I think it's going to be published soon, actually. for a different outlet than Status Coup. So stay tuned for that. So I spoke with Richard Wolff about this $900 billion shit sandwich. I also spoke about a potential general strike. So looking forward to you seeing that. Please keep those super chats coming. We desperately need them. Not having Jen for over a month has hit us. She is pretty key in us making money, and we do need to make money as a company. Right now, we have 1,765 members. So if you sign up as a member before 7:30 Eastern, you will get the link to the members call. So keep signing up. And by the way, if you're a patron, you also will have access to the members call. Also, we send the link to patrons as well as our members. You have to be a $5 or higher member to get the link for the members call. If you, for whatever reason, don't see the link in your email, you can email us at info@statuscoup.com. We haven't sent the link yet, so if you haven't gotten it yet, we haven't sent it yet. We usually send it right before the call. So without further ado, please smash that like button. Smash that like button. We got 240 people watching. Only 125 of you. Only 125 of you have pressed that like button. So smash that like button. Also, before we air the Richard Wolff interview, I've already told you about the members call tonight, 7:30 Eastern. We will also be covering the March on Jeff Bezos. Yes! The March on Bezos tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern. Christian Smalls Group, former Amazon workers, as well as union folk, the Congress of Essential Workers, will be marching on Jeff Bezos's luxury apartment in New York City, right to give him his Christmas gift from the working class of America. So John will be covering that tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern, so make sure you're there. We will be covering it in its entirety. Last one was very entertaining. Hopefully this one's bigger. I spoke with a couple people that are planning this, and they expect it to be fairly big. If you don't know, as far as we know, over 20,000 Amazon workers have been diagnosed with COVID. Logic would tell you it's more than that. Jeff Bezos, as I interviewed workers early in this pandemic from Amazon, did not provide the proper PPP. The richest man in the world, by the way, did not provide the proper PPP, did not provide hand sanitizer in all warehouses, did not provide enough masks in all warehouses. They provided hazard pay for about a minute, 5 minutes, and then stripped hazard pay, and he has increased his wealth. By hundreds of billions of dollars during this pandemic. So we will cover the march on Bezos' apartment in New York City tomorrow. Be there at 6 o'clock Eastern. Let me read some super chats before I go to Richard Wolff. Tony, $4.99. I think Jordan Sheridan may have been in my dream, exposing corruption. Happy to be in your dreams. Happy to be in your dreams. Thank you for the super chat. Andres, $4.99. Hello from Cuban Americans. Love our Cuban American viewers. And I love Cuban food, by the way. I haven't been to Miami in a while, but absolutely delicious. R. Spinato, $4.99. Appreciate it. Brath White Bone Spurs Quackerbush, $5. The bill is actually 2.3 spending bill with a special $900 billion COVID package attached. Among other things, why is there money for the wall in it? That's a good question. Why is there $500 million for Israel in it? Why is there a tax break for business people to write off their martini lunches? There's a lot of terrible shit packed in there. So good point. Why is there money in Wall Street in the bill? Well, when you give government lawmakers a 1,000-page bill and you give them 4 hours before voting on it, there's a lot of shit in there that they probably don't read and frankly don't care about. So we'll talk more about that after, but without further ado, unfortunately, I didn't have time to have Colin edit this, so you will see my actual green screen in the background without the graphic, but we're not 60 minutes. We don't need to be polished. We'll re-edit the video to post tomorrow with the graphic behind me and, some bells and whistles. So without further ado, here is Professor Richard Wolff responding to this bipartisan significant accomplish, as CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times are framing it. Keep those super chats coming and smash that like button. Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Professor Richard Wolff. He is the founder of Democracy at Work and one of the leading progressive economists in the country. I thought of you first I'm fairly disgusted by what is being heralded as a bipartisan, I hear significant bipartisan accomplishment. $900 billion during a deadly pandemic with 20 million people now filing unemployment claims. 8 million more have gone into poverty during this pandemic. Before I get onto my rant, what is your view of this quote-unquote significant bipartisan accomplishment of $300 a week unemployment and checks of $600?
Well, I agree that it's significant, but in the opposite sense that they intend that word to be understood. Is a significant failure. It's too little, it's too late, and in the face of the crisis we're in as a society, it's unspeakably inadequate. It blows my mind in all the senses of that term. Let me explain. We are going through two simultaneous disasters. A very serious capitalist crash, which began in February, and then on top of it, the COVID disaster, which begins in March. This society would have been challenged in fundamental ways by either of those alone. A virus reminiscent of 1918, when the Spanish flu killed 700,000 Americans, or reminiscent of the Great Depression, when we had comparable levels of unemployment, and at some moments higher. But to have two at the same time, I'm not sure that's ever happened in American history before, and it needs a dramatic response to begin to be adequate to what we have. And what we have seen is a dereliction of duty by the private capitalist sector, by the government, separately and together. And this last weekend's Congress action is just the tip of an ugly, ugly iceberg. First of all, the private. We have the people, we have the tools, the equipment. We know how to produce tests, masks, gloves, ventilators, hospital beds. We could do it all. We have desperate unemployed people who want a job. Put them to work to produce what our society needs. Testing on a regular basis for all 325 million people, and the gloves, and the masks, and the adjusted school situations. So one teacher for every 4 students with social distancing. We can solve all these problems, but our private sector didn't do it. You know why? Because it isn't profitable for a company to make masks, put them in some warehouse, store them, monitor them, clean them, protect them, replace them. For how long? Who knows, until the next virus comes. It's too risky, and it doesn't make enough profit. And under the laws of capitalism, the businesses that could have produced all of that and stockpiled it chose not to do so. They found more profitable outlets with less risk. Okay, that's a failure of private capitalism to keep us safe from a virus. One of the first requirements of any adequate economic system is that it protects public health. If you don't do that, there isn't much point in much of the rest of it. So what is this? And the government could have come in. The government could have come in and bought the masks as fast as they came off the assembly line, and then at government expense, store them and monitor and clean them. And the same for hospitals and the same. We didn't do that. The government could have. We know the government could have, because there's another area where the government does that. We call that defense. See, it turns out that it isn't privately profitable to make a missile or a machine gun or an aircraft carrier or anything else. Why? Same problem. Lots of expenditure, and then an unknown waiting until the next military adventure requires them. Too risky, not good. So you know how we solve that problem? The government comes in, buys the missile, buys the aircraft carrier right when it's completed. Check is in the mail, profit earned, price agreed upon. Then the government, using our tax money, stores it, monitors it, cleans it, repairs it. We didn't do that for the health of our people, even though we already have lost more people to COVID-19 in 1 year than we lost in troops in World War II. I mean, boggles the mind how dysfunctional our private capitalism and the government that they have, after all, control. Their dereliction here will, I believe, challenge the viability and the durability of the system we're living under.
And I want to ask you, you're an economist, so you know how far money can go. You know, I hear, because the whole discussion is always, oh, it's better than nothing, right? $300 a week is better than nothing. $600 a week, which, by the way, Bernie and Republican Josh Hawley had to fight just to get that crumb in there. But if you're an unemployed person who's been unemployed for months, how far is $300 a week with a $600 check going to get you in terms of digging out of the debt you've already incurred being unemployed? Not to mention, you know the bureaucracy of the unemployment system. They're not getting that unemployment immediately. It's going to take a while because our state unemployment system is overrun, each state. So $300 a week with a $600 check plus the PPP money that the last time a lot of these corporations and multi-billionaires that are not small businesses raided the PPP fund. Is $300 a week, a $600 check, going to stave off poverty or eventual homelessness for millions of Americans?
The way I'll answer it is to describe a scene that occurs in many films and many novels. A beggar is on the street, desperate, holding out his or her hand. A wealthy person comes by, sees the beggar, stops, reaches into his or her pocket, takes out a nickel and gives it to the beggar, who sees the nickel, throws it on the ground in disgust, and says to the person, you know, that's not better than nothing. Nothing would be better than that, because what you've done is add humiliation and ugliness to the difficult position I was already in. What in the world would, either walk by, which is bad, or give me something. But what are you doing? What is it you're saying to yourself and to me? That's my reaction. Of course this money is not adequate. People, look, over 60 million Americans, that's more than 1 in 3 of our labor force, have had to file unemployment claims at some point between March 1st and today. Many of them weren't unemployed that whole period of time. They were unemployed for, 2 weeks or 6 weeks or something in there. But the problem is when you're unemployed, for the reasons you just pointed to, because it takes time to get you a check, and you're stuck for a while, you know what you do? You use up whatever savings you might have accumulated. You use up whatever credit you have with your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, your community. And then you're now really at death's door in terms of your financial situation. And to give you $600 plus an extra $300, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with helping people. It just means that a portion of the debts they've accumulated over the last 9 months is now reduced, leaving them with the remainder and the immediate prospect of more shortfalls coming forward, especially when you notice that provision for 300, that is over in March of this coming year. So it's a very short-term operation. Let me give you another numerical example. $25 billion was set aside for helping tenants who can't pay their rent to avoid evictions. The Brookings Institute in Washington tells us that between 9 and 10 million American households face eviction because for part or all of the last 8 months, they haven't paid their rent. Let me be clear, that rent is still owed by those people. The landlord has the right to add interest and penalties for non-payment, which means they now owe many thousands of dollars in back rent, interest, and penalties. If you take $25 billion and you divide it by let's use the round number, 10 million people facing eviction, which is what Brookings tells us, that works out to $2,500 per household. That will barely eat into the accumulated default rent that they owe. Meanwhile, they only pushed the eviction ban to the end of January. So 1 month from December 31st to January. So what are you telling these people? That whatever anxiety was driving them crazy about having a place, a roof over their head, they're stuck with it. You're not dealing with it. You're not doing away with it. The anxiety of the landlords that they'll never get a rent payment remains. You've put a Band-Aid on a cancer, you crazy people, you. You are leaving this society bereft, one of the richest countries in the world, condemning 40, 50 millions of its people. That's how many live in 10 million households. You know, you're condemning them to a level of anxiety about their home on top of their anxiety about their jobs and incomes, on top of their anxiety about a deadly disease. What kind of a society does this when at the same time you've just finished making the richest people in your society stunningly richer? Really, you take a step back and you scratch your head and you ask, what morality, what religion, what ethics could possibly rationalize such behavior?
And it's a good segue because you mentioned that we're the wealthiest nation on earth. I want to just read to you, throughout this pandemic, Australia has been giving its citizens nearly $2,000 a month, Canada about $1,500 a month, Denmark up to $3,200 a month, France up to $7,500 a month, including, per couple versus individual. Germany about $7,000 a month, Ireland about $1,800 a month, the UK about $3,000 a month, the US $1,200 for the last 32 weeks. I mean, I spoke with someone yesterday who said, yeah, but we have 330 million people, those countries are much smaller. And I said, what does that matter? We print money. Yeah. We print money for war. We print money for all sorts of goods and subsidies to the banks, the fossil fuel companies.
But Jordan, you don't even have to do that. If you add up the populations of the countries you just rattled off in Europe, you will quickly realize that the population of the EU is larger than the population of the United States. Yes, each decision had to be made because they're separate countries and their unification is a, iffy business. So we do it on a national basis. They do it on their individual national bases. But when you add up on the aggregate, they're taking care of their people. And when you add up the numbers, it's a big or bigger a population than we have.
And what's mind-boggling to me, from both sides, first of all of a sudden Republicans care about debt again. They didn't care about debt for the tax cuts Trump put in, the defense. They only care about debt when they're back in the minority, when they're in power, whatever. But the Democratic Party, I'm hearing that this is, quote, a down payment, that Biden's going to come in and we'll get a real bill. Well, I don't know. I know you're an economist, not a pundit. If I'm a Republican, wouldn't I just say, no, we gave $2 trillion in March. We just gave $900 billion in December. We're not giving any more votes. The vaccine's coming. Let's see how far this could take us. To me, this is not a down payment. This is it. This is all that Biden is going to. Biden's not going to be able to get anything significant through, assuming the Republicans maintain control of the Senate.
Yeah, let me add to that. You're absolutely right. I am no pundit any more than anybody else is, but I see the writing on the wall. I see how many Democrats are not even willing to go much beyond this. I see this crazy, ugly rationale. It's better than nothing. Wow. I don't remember in the Bible when it says you should help your fellow man and woman, that you can give them very little because it's better than nothing. That's not the spirit that I thought we were supposed to be interested in here. But let me give you another idea. Whenever the Republicans, or the Democrats for that matter, want to do something really ugly, one of the things they spend time on is figuring out how to represent it so that it doesn't sound and look quite as ugly as it is. And I'm going to give you a case in point from this weekend. There is no money in this bill, really, to help out states and cities and municipalities that have been suffering a crushing shortfall of revenue. There's no mystery here. If you have tens of millions of people unemployed, they don't pay taxes. If businesses are going out of business, they don't pay taxes. On and on and on. So through no fault of these cities and towns, they are suffering a catastrophic drop in tax revenue. And by the law in the United States, they can't borrow for budgetary reasons. They can only borrow for capital projects. So they're stuck. You have to help them, which was what was done in 2008 with the subprime mortgage crisis. You didn't do it this time. And why not? And the answer is very obvious. The Republicans don't want to help the cities and many of the states because they don't want that, since that help will only kick in now, to look like the Democrats did it. They prefer these states to wallow in difficulty, which they can blame on the Democrats, even though they're the ones that made it happen. So I know, we all know what's going on, but listen to the rationale, because it again boggles the mind. Rationale, Mitch McConnell. We're not going to reward cities and states who have mismanaged their affairs. Now, there is no evidence whatsoever that any of these cities or states mismanaged anything. A. B. There are remedies for mismanagement. We all know what they are. But here's the best one. When all that money was given by the Treasury and by the Federal Reserve to every major and minor business in the country, nobody suggested we shouldn't reward businesses that were mismanaged. Nobody wants to measure whether they were mismanaged or not. And the idea was you help all businesses that are eligible. You don't have a criterion of mismanagement. You invented that in order not to have to give money to cities and states because of a political calculus. And even that, I understand, and I wouldn't be yelling at you about it the way I am. But here's why I'm concerned. I actually care. This is an economic system, and let's give it a name, capitalism, that is now in a full flight of self-destruction. You can't do what is being done here. The story you read off before about what the Europeans, for example, are giving per week, that's not done because they're nice people, and it's not done because they aren't capitalists. It's done out of self-preservation. You better take care of the mass of people. Otherwise, your position at the top of the pyramid is going to be in jeopardy. The Americans haven't figured that out yet, and that's going to come back and bite them in the rear end in a way that ought to make them tremble.
And, that's another good segue, because, listen, at a certain point, the people, are going to say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not calling for, any violence or anything, but at a certain point, if you're unemployed, if you've lost your health care, if you're facing, what does a moratorium do? It just delays the inevitable. At a certain point, we're seeing more talk of a general strike or something of this type. India right now has significant protests, economic protests. We've seen it in other countries. Do you think that what the government is doing right now, maybe that's not their intention, but do you think people will finally, for lack of a better word, rise up and do some type of strike?
Yes, I think they're already talking about it, as you correctly say. I see various signs of it flying across my email more each day than I did, a week or two before. Yeah, it's still in the realm of talk. It's still in the realm of maybe, but you're not leaving people with any option, and that's very dangerous. You're not leaving them with, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you really going to throw millions of people into the streets to become homeless, which makes you much more likely to catch this disease because you can't wash your hands, because you can't do all of the minimum safety precautions we're all urged to do? Look at the torture of telling everybody to wash their hands and then depriving them of the bathroom in their home where they might otherwise do that. You're crossing one line after another, And I think you're right. This is accumulated. You know, a great political leader once calmed his associates when they said, it's taking so long, it's taking so long. And he answered them, he said, you know, for decades, nothing seems to happen. And then in a few weeks, decades happen. That's the answer. I think what we're living through is the accumulation of outrage. And this performance by the Democrats in accepting it, by the Republicans in insisting on it, that is a performance that is a quantum leap further down the road of self-destruction.
And my last question, you know, this is not a sexy topic, but I have seen it in my travels. We have a massive gentrification crisis in this country. And real estate developers are one of the special interests purchasing our politicians, but they are chomping at the bit to get poor people out of, you know, public housing, get working class people out of apartments so that they could bulldoze it and build luxury condos, build, you know, big shopping complexes. You look at New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. 20 years ago is a completely different place than it is now. Do you feel that this quote unquote moratorium on evictions, the government will allow these people to be forced out because this is a gift to their donors and the developers that want them out so that they could recreate these cities as luxury high rises and skyscrapers?
Yes, I think there's a number of factors come together. I lump them together under, that capitalism has decided, U.S. capitalism has decided that it is going to rearrange the universe for itself. It started 40 years ago when they decided to move production out of the country on a massive scale, taking advantage of lower wages, fewer environmental controls, and all the rest of it, and relocate to China or India or Brazil or wherever they went, Mexico, doesn't really matter, and to install a technology, computers, then robots, then artificial intelligence, to get rid of vast numbers of jobs, took no responsibility for the devastation of the workers who lost their jobs, the families who lost a wage earner, the communities who lost tax revenue from all of this. That was all, collateral damage somebody else would take care of. And what it means is you've got a growing mass of the American people that have no future, have no present, are under tremendous pressure as they lose any chance of the so-called American dream. Why are we surprised that they turn to white supremacy or to misogyny or to Donald Trump or to God knows what desperate efforts, however far-fetched, because their situation is unbearable? Woe be it to this society when all of that accumulation says finally, as it should have all along, this system doesn't work for us. This is a system designed to work for a very small number of very rich people who, even during a pandemic, use the opportunity to become even richer than they already were. Here's an exercise. Jeffrey Bezos, it goes with the territory. If you're going to be that rich, you're going to be the target. So Jeffrey Bezos went from, if I understand correctly, roughly $130 billion in personal wealth to over $200 billion in personal wealth during a time when 60 million of his fellow citizens had to file for unemployment compensation for longer or shorter periods. Okay, if you took away from Mr. Bezos 180 of the 200 billion he has, you would have a very nice pot to do a lot of good work for desperate people, transforming this society, let alone if you did it to everybody else of the 600 odd billionaires we have in the country. But here's the irony. If you did that, Jeffrey Bezos with his 20 billion would still be one of the 50 richest people on this planet. So under the rule of morality that I heard of, if I can leave this man among the 50 richest people on the planet while allowing me to have $180 billion with which to transform the lives of I have to do that, or else my commitment to the human community has disappeared. And if I can say it, it's already there in the culture. And I think you are going to see people becoming more and more extreme. It will be the job of the right wing to try to hold on to those people, to line them up for the next Donald Trump. I understand that. They're cashing in that way on capitalism's self-destruction. But on the other side of the political fence, where I live, we are also trying to figure out how to make the points about what's going on so that the mass of people stop aiming their upset at the wrong target and begin to recognize changing the system is the solution.
Thank you very much, Professor Richard Wolff, founder of Democracy at Work. Check that out on YouTube. He does great videos there. And happy holidays. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Jordan. You too.
That was Professor Richard Wolff. We will recut that interview and add in this wonderful green screen behind me and post it tomorrow morning. So definitely share it and all that when it's posted tomorrow morning. I recorded it at 4:30 Eastern, and it takes a while for Colin to edit and put in the green screen. So I figured let's just go live with the raw thing, but we'll make it look pretty tomorrow. And I think he's absolutely right. I think what people don't understand, and the corporate media is gaslighting you not to understand, is this is not some significant bipartisan accomplishment. This is a slap in the fucking face to the unemployed, to those without health care, to those facing evictions, to those whose debt has been stacking and stacking and stacking like a mountain during this pandemic. As Jeff Bezos has gotten richer, and the plutocrats have gotten richer, and frankly, a lot of our politicians have gotten richer because we don't live in a country, we live in the United Corporations of America. Richard Wolff is absolutely right. If you are, I think he used a movie scene. If you're homeless, desperate, and somebody hands out their pocket and hands you a nickel, are you accepting that? Excited? Or are you humiliated? Is a nickel better? Is a nickel some wonderful gesture if you're desperate? That's what this is. People aren't even going to get the $300 a week anytime soon. $600, what is that going to get you? Even if you don't live in a major city, let's say you live in rural America, what is $600 going to do for you if you've been unemployed for months? If you're going to be unemployed possibly for another several set of months? There's a whole new class of people that are now part of the long-term unemployed. And Nancy Pelosi wants to go up there presenting this as some type of victory when literally a month and a half ago she was offered double it. Remember, Trump, Mnuchin offered Pelosi $1.8 trillion before the election. She twisted herself into a human pretzel to explain why that wasn't good enough. But now, $900 billion is good enough. And by the way, the only reason we even got the $600 check, which is a joke, is because of Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley. If they didn't fight, we wouldn't even had that crumb in this preposterous bill. And the most important thing, folks, and thank you for the super chat, Brothwaite, Bone Spurs. Uncle Joe is a disaster. He will give us accelerationism and a Republican House and Senate in 2022 and a fascist in the White House in 2024. I think that's where we're going. And yes, subscribe if you're new here. And wait till I'm about to tell you this new poll. A majority want Pelosi out. But the most important thing is, this is bullshit when they tell you, when Pelosi and the Democrats going on CNN and MSNBC tell you, no, this is just a down payment. Biden gave a press conference today saying the same thing. This is just temporary Band-Aid. When we get in, when Biden gets in, we're going to do something much bigger. Oh, yeah? Well, you better hope that you win those 2 Senate seats in Georgia so you could get a Democratic majority. But even if you get a Democratic majority in the Senate with your narrow House majority, That's not a guarantee that you're going to have enough votes to pass an additional stimulus. Obama had a full Democratic Senate, a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, and he had bigger margins in the Senate and the House that the Democrats will have if they retake the Senate. Obama had bigger margins in the House than Pelosi has now. She has a 4-seat majority. A 4-seat majority. Right there. And that might slim even further because there's 2 outstanding elections that haven't been called, one in Iowa and one in upstate New York. So the Democrats might even, their lead might narrow even worse than 4 seats. So again, on what planet, after Republicans agreed to the $2 trillion original sin, the CARES Act, which gave $4 trillion in leveraged money to multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates that did not need it, and now they're agreeing to this $900 billion shit sandwich. Again, shit sandwich. Drop in those super chats because I'm demonetized. What planet are Republicans who are now, howling about the debt? It's like a broken record. They don't give a flying fuck about the debt when they're in power. When they're in the minority, oh my God, our children and our grandchildren, oh my. We're shackling them with debt. They're ruining our future. Republicans are not going to vote for any more stimulus under Biden. I know Biden thinks, he's still living in 1985, the good old days, when, Democratic Speaker Tip O'Neill worked with Ronald Reagan and the Republicans, and the good old days where Democrats and Republicans worked together to fucking destroy you. The good old days when Democrats and Republicans bipartisan compromise to give you NAFTA, to give you the Patriot Act, to give you repealing Glass-Steagall, to give you the crime bill, to give you the Iraq war, to give you the deregulating the media industry, to give you welfare reform. Oh my God, the list goes on and on. I'm getting dizzy. This is it. We're not getting any other stimulus. I'd be glad to have egg on my face if Biden comes in and we get another $2-3 trillion bill. But even if we did, what do you think Biden's going to do? Exactly what Obama did. He's not giving $2,000 a month. He'll go the neoliberal route if he could get another stimulus through. We'll get wonderful tax credits, tax cuts, tax credits, job retraining programs, incremental neoliberal bullshit that's not going to rescue anyone. And oh, by the way, he's not going to do canceling the rent, canceling the mortgage. So when the moratorium ends, the moratorium will end when the artificial economic numbers get better. Artificial numbers meaning the unemployment rate, which is artificial. That's not a true representation, the unemployment rate, of how the economy is actually doing. It's a good representation of how many people have stopped looking for work. The unemployment rate goes down when more people stop looking for work because they've given up. The real unemployment number is usually 5 to 6 points higher than the actual unemployment number. And yes, boycott Amazon. If you're coming late, we will be on the ground in the field tomorrow night. A lot of other channels talk about being the progressive revolution. We're out there in the field covering these events. Often, constantly, and often. Even during a deadly pandemic, we've been out there. I got coronavirus. Jen, unfortunately, has coronavirus. John, knock on wood, our cameraman has not gotten it. So we will be out there covering. There is a protest tomorrow of former Amazon workers as well as other activists tomorrow marching on Jeff Bezos's luxury apartment in New York City. Sign up. Be there tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And as a reminder, we have our members call now in just an hour and a half tonight. Our members call, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. If you're a member, you will get the link. If you don't get the link, email me, info@statuscoup.com. That's info@statuscoup.com. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month. I'll drop the link in to the Super Chat. It's through Zoom. And we did, while I was airing that Richard Wolff interview, we did get 2 new members. Welcome, new Status Coup member Les. Welcome, new Status Coup member Tracy. Welcome, new Status Coup member Frank. We got 3. So we're now at 1,766. 1,766. So keep signing up, statuscoup.com/join. So I want to move on and smash that like button. We got over 1,000 people watching, 656 of you. So we've been talking here a lot about the force the vote idea, which has been a huge fucking fracas on the interweb and social media and YouTube over the last 2 weeks. And everybody is fighting everybody because, oh my God, Jimmy Dore came up with the idea and we don't like Jimmy Dore, so we have to knock down a good idea. I have been on the record, I'm for force the vote. I don't care who it came from, although it did come from Jimmy and I think he deserves credit. If you watched Jimmy's show last night, which I did, for those saying that Jimmy is doing this for clicks, why don't you go watch his show and listen to the story he told about almost dying from a rare bone disease that he had and literally having to bankrupt him and his wife to get medical care. Literally, he had a very rare bone disease. I didn't even know about this. He had a rare bone disease. His spine snapped. He went from 5'10" to 5'7" because his spine snapped. The only way he could get out of bed for a year was downing Vicodin. He went around and around for, I think, 2 years, getting misdiagnosed, or doctors couldn't diagnose him what was wrong. Meanwhile, he was recommended to see the best specialist, I guess, in the country, but that specialist doesn't take an insurance. Because in America, you can't see the best doctor if you don't have the money. So he and his wife had to take out loans, I think another mortgage, bankrupt themselves, literally go into medical bankruptcy to see the right doctor who diagnosed him with a rare, I apologize, I can't remember what it's called, a rare disease. And finally, he got the surgery that literally saved his life. The doctor was shocked when he even was able to walk into his office because his bone disease was that bad. So I don't think he's doing this for clicks. I really don't. And when I say it's not about Jimmy, I mean, it's really not about Jimmy. It's about, all these people on the interweb. And thank you for the super chat, Jessica P, #ForceTheVote. I'm not into all these like high school dramatic fights between this YouTube host and that one. Like, fuck it. I've had enough drama over the last years. But I'm seeing a lot of YouTube hosts talking like people like Jimmy are not qualified or don't have the credentials or haven't been in the movement or haven't done the movement work long enough to be leading this. And my response, as somebody who's traveled the country for 6 years, who has been on the ground covering movements, BLM, No DAPL, Amazon strike, George Floyd protests, Breonna Taylor protests, General Motors workers getting laid off, and the union movement that responded to that. I'm not a movement leader, I don't think, but I know a little bit something about movements. And I don't know, the arguments against this is that it won't pass if the progressives who currently do have the numbers, and we redid this graphic. I took Richie Torres out there because I looked into him, and I don't think he's progressive. I think he's a fraud. He ran on Medicare for All. That's why I had him in there, but I took him out. But for those saying we don't have the leverage right now to win, to pass Medicare for All, well, I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King, Gloria Steinem, Harvey Milk, indigenous leaders, Malcolm X, we could go on. I'm pretty sure they weren't like, no, we shouldn't cross the Selma Bridge. We shouldn't do that because we're not going to win tomorrow. I'm pretty sure Harvey Milk wasn't like, no, let's not go protest because we don't have the votes or we don't have the consensus yet. I mean, that argument is just the antithesis of how movements actually work. Movements and their goals don't generally succeed without many, many losses beforehand. But those losses are valuable because they serve as building blocks to the ultimate victory. So all these people who, frankly, I feel are extremely, maybe not intentionally, but are extremely condescending. And thank you, new member Joshua. Thank you, new member Vincent. We're now at 1,768. 1,768 Status Coup members. Keep signing up. For new members, you will get the link to the Zoom call. You will also get a link to join our Discord. $2 or higher, you get access to our Discord. $5 or higher a month, you get the Discord plus the members call and others. So if you just signed up, you will get a link to our members call happening at 7:30 Eastern time, as well as the Discord link. So stay tuned. I'm live, so we can't send you it right now, but we will. But who made, with all due respect, who made Sam Cedar or Benjamin Dixon or Nomiki, who I used to work with, like the authorities on the movement? Or Jank, who I used to work for. I mean, I ain't even gonna get into that. Who gives them like a higher credential to dictate the strategy? I'm not saying you should by default listen to Jimmy or me. I'm saying the progressive movement is not about credentials. It's not about who's been in the trenches in the movement long enough. I would say Jimmy, based on what he went through medically, is plenty qualified to propose this idea. I won't get into it fully, but, obviously I was let go by the Young Turks 3 years ago. And I needed health care because I needed back surgery. Soon after I was let go. I was let go by the Young Turks in November 2017. By February 2018, I could not walk. My lower back, if you know about back stuff, my L5, S1, I had been going to a chiropractor for months, and this brainiac said, no, you don't need an MRI. You're fine. We'll do chiropractic work. You don't need an MRI. By February, I had massive spasms going down my entire left leg. Spasms in my hamstring, spasms in my calf, and my left foot had gone completely numb. I was told if I don't get surgery, the MRI that this chiropractor told me not to get showed that my L5 disc had been squeezed. It was basically jammed into my S1, my sciatic nerve. And a large piece of my disc had been squeezed onto my L5 to the point that a piece of it broke off and was stuck in my spinal cavity, which I didn't even know there was a thing called a spinal cavity. I was living on my own at that time. And for days, all I could do was lay on my stomach in bed. That was the only position that I could get in without severe, because what happens is when you have that kind of compression and a piece of your disc is stuck, your muscles surrounding the nerve contract. They contract. That's what the spasms were about. When I got to my parents' house, my dad picked me up in the city. I was literally in the front seat of his car in thriving pain. Every bump in the drive. Thriving pain because I had severe muscle spasms and I couldn't feel my left foot. I went to a doctor. He said, if you don't get surgery like ASAP, you're going to permanently lose feeling in your foot. When I was let go from the Young Turks, I got unemployment. But in America, you have either Obamacare, which the Affordable Care Act, guess what? Obamacare in New York, where I lived, would have cost me $800 to $900 a month without even getting to the deductible. Without even getting to the deductible. $800 a month. So I had to go on something called Cobra, which allowed me to keep the insurance I had at the Young Turks for over $600 a month. Again, paying $600 a month before deductibles, before copays, before co-insurance, before all that, the surprise bills that we all get. Pay $600 a month just to maintain the insurance I had at the Young Turks, which frankly wasn't even that great to begin with. Thank the Lord, if there is one. I have wonderful parents. They're not rich. They're small business owners that helped me pay for that Cobra. I basically had to split it with them. I had to dip into the very little savings I had to pay for Cobra, and my parents helped me out. That's the only way that I could pay the $600 a month to have Cobra to get that surgery that basically saved my foot. Not that my foot was going to be amputated, but I could not feel my foot. If you see, I still have the MRI. If you see the chunk of my disc that they took out of my back, I took a picture. It literally looked like a gigantic piece of fried chicken. Not to disgust you. Jen saw me before the surgery. I was in throbbing pain. In large part, by the way, because I had hurt my back years earlier, but because of all the travel I did in 2015 and 2016 on the campaign trail, a lot of flights, a lot of different hotels. Then I was at Standing Rock, which is the Great Plains in North Dakota. I fell several times, slipped on ice in Standing Rock. I'm not blaming the Young Turks, obviously. Shit happens when you're traveling that much. It's not their fault. But, reporting, I wasn't in a cubicle, right? I was all over the country, and I didn't know, because a moron chiropractor told me you don't need an MRI, that while I was traveling, my disc was basically jammed into my spine, my sciatic nerve, and I was making it worse. So I tell all of this to you. I didn't go into medical bankruptcy like Jimmy did. Thank God my parents helped me out with the Cobra. I had some savings to pay for part of the Cobra. But if I didn't have my parents and I didn't have any savings, I would have not been able to get surgery. And I would not. I probably, literally to this day, it's a lot better than no feeling. My left toe, I can't feel. I never got full feeling back in my left toe. Then a year after the first surgery helped a lot of things. I could walk without pain, but I had to do physical therapy for a year, this and that, and I wasn't getting full feeling back, and I still was too easily pulling my back. So I went to get another MRI, and I found that they found that there was calcium deposits developing. So they had to go in again. I wasn't in as much pain as the first surgery, but they had to go in again to take out the calcium deposits, clean up the disc. So I had 2 surgeries in 1 year. With insurance, how much that cost me? Forget the Cobra, which I just told you about. With insurance, for these 2 surgeries cost me over $4,000 while I was developing Status Coup with Jen from nothing. I don't have a lot, there's been dipshits online saying I'm rich or something like this. Yeah, I'm rich. That's why I've been working 7 days a week doing a GoFundMe, because I'm so rich. No, I'm not rich. I grew up middle class, living in suburbia on Long Island. I wasn't poor, but I wasn't rich, and I'm not rich now. But Cobra and this whole system is a gigantic scam. And, with all due respect to Sam Cedar and Benjamin Dixon and Nomiki and all these other people poo-pooing this idea, I'm not saying I don't know their situations. Maybe at one point they didn't have health care. Maybe they have had struggles. I have no idea. But there's a lot of people poo-pooing this idea right now that do have health care right now, that are fairly comfortable. And I'm fairly comfortable right now, too. My wife and I are lucky. We're not on breadlines. She does okay, and I'm doing okay. Okay. But this idea, this notion that we shouldn't push for this because it's not going to pass right now, that is not the measurement we should be using for the progressive movement. And if that's the measurement we're going to use for the progressive movement, let's not do anything if it's not going to pass the first time, then these things are not going to pass until all of us are in the ground after we're all gone. You don't say, let's not try because it's not going to pass on the first time. There is value in trying. And let me explain the value the way I see it. And we got over 1,000 people watching. Keep smashing that like button. And again, I'm done talking about Jimmy. I like Jimmy. Sometimes he goes over the top. I've told him that to his face. I'm not tone policing him, but we all have different styles. But I think AOC should get criticism. Frankly, I'd like to know why in the world did Bernie Sanders vote for this shit sandwich stimulus yesterday? There on the right, Bernie Sanders, yes. I'd like to know, why is Rashida Tlaib the only member of the squad that voted against this yesterday? AOC voted for this $900 billion slap in the face. Ilhan Omar voted yes on this slap in the face. Ayanna Pressley voted yes on this slap on the face. Ro Khanna voted yes on this slap in the face. Tulsi Gabbard, who's leaving Congress, voted no. Rashida Tlaib voted no. I'm not calling them sellouts, but I'd like to know, why are you giving these insults, this totally inadequate slap in the face, the credibility with your vote? I mean, it's ridiculous. So, at the end of the day, why this is a good idea, and we now have new information, by the way. A new poll shows the majority of those polled want Pelosi out as House Speaker. Though Democrats' House majority was nearly wiped out in the last month's election, the party appears poised to retain Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi for a fourth two-year stint as Speaker next month. A new Political Morning Consult poll shows most Democrats think she should keep the gavel, but a majority of voters oppose Pelosi staying as Speaker. Only 31% of all voters think Pelosi should be elected as Speaker when the Congress begins, while 56% think she should not. But self-identified Democrats say the first woman House Speaker should stay on by a 20-point margin, 53 to 33. So, overall, she's down. She's underwater. 56% say no. Among Democrats, frankly, I don't really think that's an impressive number. Just 55% of Democrats think she should stay on? Excuse me, 53%. That's not exactly an overwhelming mandate. And like I said, all these people saying we don't have the numbers, what are you looking at? Again, she's only got a 4-seat majority. There's 7 current members strongly for Medicare for all. So what are you looking at? 7 is bigger than 4. These 7 up top have the power to make a demand, even if that demand isn't going to pass right away. The 4 coming in: Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Marie Newman, Mondaire Jones. If there is a God, Nina Turner eventually. It only strengthens that position. So then the argument becomes, well, what's the point, Jordan? Yeah, you could have a, quote, performative vote, but it's not going to pass. Well, here's the point. You don't ultimately get the victory without public fights for many years before that victory. And part of those public fights are, you ready? Performative, but not just for shits and giggles, to continue to move the Overton window, to continue to widen the support base for the policy you're trying to propose. This goes for gay marriage. This goes for the Voting Rights Act. This goes for DACA, immigration rights, a pathway to citizenship. Many, many things that 10, 15, 20 years ago did not have majority support. But because those activists and those movement leaders kept fighting publicly, and they kept losing publicly, but they kept building the consensus to a boiling point that politicians, it became untenable. It became untenable for politicians to keep saying no. Joe Biden and Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton were put in a position where it was no longer a politically tenable position to be against gay marriage. And if you continue to be against gay marriage, you were risking getting kicked out of Congress. So to me, here's why you do it. right now, first of all, let's go back to the primaries. And when I have time or when Jen's feeling better, I'll actually get these numbers. When you look at the Democratic primary, even the states that Joe Biden won over Bernie Sanders, Medicare for All had majority support in every single Democratic primary state, including conservative states like South Carolina, Alabama, and Mississippi. So we have that. Number two, support for Medicare for All has only increased during this pandemic. Number three, we have primaries. We have 2022 congressional races. What can progressives use as a political weapon to primary corporate Democrats? I don't know. If there's a vote that we could get them on the record voting against universal health care during a deadly pandemic where at this point 320,000 people have died, and by the time there is a vote, probably, unfortunately, way more. I don't know. Would it be possibly a good weapon to have as a political tool to hammer corporate Democrats who vote against it? In television ads, in digital ads, in social media campaigns, who voted against it on the floor? So no, it might not pass right now, but it would be a political tool to use to widen this, to increase this, to get more people in to eventually pass it. This is how politics works. And I think AOC tweeted it or others tweeted it. All right, well, Jordan, the Democrats know it's not going to pass, so a lot of them will just vote yes, knowing it won't pass. Great. It's a win-win whether they vote no or vote yes. Here's why. If you get a lot more votes yes, you have even more of a case. You have even more of a case if a lot of Democrats that you don't think are going to vote yes, then you could say, look, this is only lost by 20 votes, whatever it is. This isn't pie in the sky. This isn't so far from getting passed. We're 20 to 30 votes away if a lot of the Democrats vote for it knowing it won't pass. But even more than that, you could still use that vote, them voting yes for it, against them to primary them, because voting yes is just one step. What have those people who voted yes done after that to make it a reality? To pressure Nancy Pelosi, to pressure President Biden, Chuck Schumer. Who have those people been taking money from since they voted yes? Have they taken money from pharmaceutical companies? Bet you they will. Have they taken money from for-profit healthcare? Private hospitals, Wall Street banks that are heavily invested in the for-profit healthcare industry? Because they could vote yes. That doesn't mean we can't hammer them for still being tied at the hip to the for-profit healthcare industry. So, again, all of these people who consider themselves the credentialed progressives, the YouTube hosts, the big Twitter accounts, who are poo-pooing Jimmy and others. And by the way, I'm not saying I am the king or authority on movements. I don't think Jimmy is saying that either. No one is. To me, it's actually anti-progressive to claim, no, this person has no credential. This person is a joke. We shouldn't listen to that person. It's not about the people proposing it. It's about the idea being proposed. And I don't know another element that they're not talking about here. They're saying, no, we agree with the element of let's demand something for your votes for Speaker Pelosi, but Medicare for All is low on the list. Well, tell me when you're going to get a better opportunity, a better moment in history to push single-payer healthcare. Tell me when. You know of another pandemic coming in 5 years? Where hundreds of thousands of people are going to die? Where the survivors who survived COVID, them and their families are going to be left with, if they're lucky, just a few $1,000s in bills from their hospital stays? People are saying, no, let's demand a $15 minimum wage. They've already passed a $15 minimum wage. Biden has already rhetorically said he's for it. And by the way, even if Biden signs a $15 minimum wage, you do realize it's going to be stacked, just like they did in the States. It's not going to be $15 minimum wage next month if it passes. They're going to slowly raise it. It's going to be gradual because that's what neoliberalism is. You'd be lucky if $15 minimum wage passes and Biden signs it in January. If the federal minimum wage goes up to $15, you'd be lucky if it did that in 3 years. Remember, Bernie got criticized because his Medicare for all policy would be phased in 4 years. That's how these things work. So $15 minimum wage in 3 to 4 years, when all prices have skyrocketed anyway, what's that going to be worth? I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm actually for a $20 minimum wage. I think $15 is insufficient. But the point is, I'm not hearing. I think personally, a lot of these people who are shitting on this idea, if Cenk Uygur was the one who proposed it, if AOC was the one who proposed it, if name your credentialed, approved, progressive approved it, they'd be cheering. They'd be all for it. Because frankly, I think progressive media, and welcome new member Zachary, woohoo! Now we're cooking, baby. 1,769 members. Keep signing up as a member. Our members only call is now just 1 hour away. 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Jen is going to join right at the top. She's not feeling great. She's still really having a lot of difficulties from COVID, but she's going to join to say hello at the top, give you an update. You will get the Zoom link. If you just signed up, you'll get the Zoom link. If you didn't get the Zoom link soon before the call, email me, info@statuscoup.com, and we'll send you the link for the Zoom. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not credentialed enough, or I'm not, cool enough in progressive circles, but I really don't. I haven't heard one, and I'm open to hearing it, but I really haven't heard one take on this in terms of not doing it that really makes sense to me. I just heard kind of the moving of the goalpost and people twisting themselves into human pretzels to continue to explain why this isn't a good idea. But isn't the point of volunteering for the AOCs of the world and the Rashida Tlaibs of the world and the Ro Khannas of the world and all of these people, volunteering your time, volunteering your money, isn't the point to have them actually in Congress fighting? I'm not one who thinks just because they don't agree with me on every single thing, that makes one a sellout. I don't think that way, and I don't think you should. We're not in high school. You're not a sellout because you don't agree with me on everything. But I don't really get the point of them being in here. They're talking about, no, let's fight for committee seats. Let's fight for these logistical things like committee seats. Big fucking deal, with all due respect. The squad could get committee chairmanships. What does it matter if you pass progressive things in your committees and they then go to die if the speaker is Pelosi? Or if the president is Biden, who's not going to sign any of these things? You could pass things out of committee, but that's not the way it works, because ultimately you have to have the House leadership and the Senate leadership sign on to them, and the president. So I think, personally, to wrap it up, this is a great idea because it's a win-win. Yeah, you're probably not going to pass it on the first try, but it helps crystallize the issue and give you, progressives, if you are somebody watching right now, maybe you're thinking of primarying a Democrat, a House Democrat or a Senate Democrat in 2022. Wouldn't you like to be able to use as a political weapon their no vote on Medicare for all during a deadly pandemic where hundreds of thousands of people have died? Wouldn't you think that would be a politically useful weapon? Wouldn't you, even if they voted yes, like I said, be able to say, you voted yes, but you're still taking money from these vultures? You haven't actually done anything to pressure Democratic leadership or the president to do this? It's a win-win, folks. And I'm not hearing any valid arguments. You know, my former colleague Emma, I think, who's with Sam Cedar now, she said, "Well, Mitch McConnell can't wait for Medicare for all to hit the floor so it loses, and he could use that as a political weapon." Who cares? It has majority support among the American people, and more, it's rising in the polls among Republicans. So who cares what Mitch McConnell thinks or wants? He's on the losing end of public opinion. And again, it is a win-win. It either loses by a lot on the House floor, on the Senate floor, and we could use that as a political weapon against people we're primarying, showing the juxtaposition, the contrast between public support for this, including Democratic Party support for this, or they sign on to it. A lot more Democrats sign on to it because they know it won't pass, and they want to just sign on to it to say, hey, I voted yes. And that's a victory in two ways. Number one, we could say, look, it didn't lose by that much. We're close. We're close to getting this through. Okay, you voted for it, but you're still taking money from these vultures. You haven't done anything besides vote for it. What are you doing to make it happen? So I say, continue pushing force to vote. I say, I'd like to hear from Jank, from Benjamin Dixon, from Sam Cedar, from these other people, not about Jimmy. We know what you think about Jimmy. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But I'd like to hear specifically, what are your points against what I'm describing? You might not like me either. That's fine too. But what is your point? What is the way to knock down what I'm saying about the benefits in terms of primarying corporate Democrats in 2022, having a political weapon to primary them with? What are your strategic disagreements in terms of when will be the better time to push the issue on Medicare for all? You could say when we have more numbers, but we're not going to listen. Whatever YouTube posts is lying to you if they are telling you we will have the numbers in Congress imminently or even in the next few years, where the majority of the Democrats in Congress would be capital P progressives. That's not close. It's not. We're not going to pass Medicare for all, other progressive policies, just by growing the numbers. We have to grow the organizing around the numbers we do have, the public pressure campaigns, the shaming. We have to regrow the labor union movement in this country. As I've talked about, we need to add to all of this economic protesting not just with our bodies on the streets, but our wallets. That's right. Striking, not using Amazon. We will be covering the march on Bezos's luxury apartment in New York City tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll be live in the field. Haven't seen the Young Turks doing much in the field reporting lately. They're begging you for money. 3 emails a day begging you for money. But I don't see many other outlets in the field doing the reporting we're doing. We've been doing it during a pandemic, by the way. Frankly, at risk to our own health. Jen got COVID covering Rudy Giuliani's insane press conference over a month ago. I got COVID probably in the field covering the campaign. So that's it. That's what I got for you. I'll continue to cover the updates on Force the Vote. I'm not particularly interested in the back and forth between personalities. It doesn't really matter whether you like Jimmy, whether you hate Jimmy, whether you love Jimmy. It really doesn't matter. The grave need for healthcare in this country is much bigger than one YouTube personality. It's much bigger than Jimmy. It's much bigger than Jank and the rest of us. It's way bigger than me. This is about a desperate need. And if you're not going to fight for it, even if you're not going to win right away, if you're not going to escalate the issue, then it's not going to pass eventually. And I would beg you, and I would dare these people saying not to do it, show me a successful movement that didn't fight for these things publicly for years and lose before winning. You need the losses as building blocks, because with every loss, you gain something. Thank you for watching. As a reminder, in now less than an hour, we will have our members call through Zoom. If you are a member, you will get the link. If you are a patron, you will get the link through your email. If you don't see it, check your spam for the link. If you are one of the people that just signed up as a member, you will also get the link. If you do not see the link, email us, info@statuscoup.com. Jen usually sends it closer to the time, so you should get it within the hour. If you don't see the link, email us, info@statuscoup.com. It's with me. Jen will be there at the top. She's still sick, so she's not going to stay the whole time. I look forward to the members call. And again, we'll be live tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern time, covering the March on Bezos. Thank you to Richard Wolff. Thank you to you. Thank you to our new members. You could sign up right now to become a member before 7:30 Eastern time. You will get the link to join our members call. And there's the link to join. I will see you in less than an hour through Zoom. Peace. Oh, one more thing. I promised, because I did miss some Super Chats yesterday. I usually have Jen to keep a list of the Super Chats. So I promised Robert Copeland. He said, yesterday I sent in a Super Chat of $10 that wasn't read, which said, "Happy birthday, Jen." It was her birthday yesterday. I sent in my Super Chat for two reasons. One is that Status Coup needs to grow, and the other reason was to cheer Jen up to do Jen having COVID for like a month. So thank you, Robert, for the $10 and the well wishes to Jen. I told you I'd read it, and I read it. Thank you, guys. I'll see you in less than an hour for the members call.